A voice screamed from the darkness. "You killed him, Elvis. You stole his life." The microphone slipped from Elvis's hand. 18,000 people froze. What he did next wasn't written in any script. Las Vegas, February 1970. The International Hotel. Elvis was 40 minutes into his second show of the night, riding the wave of a perfect performance. He'd just finished an explosive version of Suspicious Minds, when the voice cut through the applause like a blade. The woman was standing in the third row, maybe 60 years old, wearing a black dress that looked decades out of style. Her face was contorted with rage, and something else. Grief. Ancient, unhealed grief. "You stole Jesse's life," she screamed again.
"You were supposed to die, not him."
Security started moving toward her, but Elvis raised his hand. The gesture stopped them cold. The band had gone silent. The room felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out. Elvis knew that name. Jesse Garon Presley. His twin brother, born 35 minutes before Elvis, on January 8, 1935, in a two-room shotgun shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. Stillborn. Elvis's mother Gladys had carried two babies. Only one survived. Elvis had spent his entire life haunted by Jesse. His mother told him stories, whispered to him that he was living for two, that Jesse was watching, that Elvis had to be enough for both of them. The survivor's guilt had shaped everything. Every song, every performance, every moment of his life. But nobody talked about Jesse publicly. It was private pain, family pain, sacred pain. The woman wasn't done. "I'm Jesse's godmother," she said, her voice carrying clearly now. "Your mama promised me she'd name him after my father. She promised me I'd hold him. But you took all the air in that room. You took everything." Elvis stood frozen at center stage. His face had gone pale. The confident performer had vanished. In his place stood a man who'd carried 35 years of guilt, suddenly facing it in front of thousands of strangers. "Ma'am," Elvis said quietly, his voice barely making it through the sound system. "I didn't choose to live." "But you did live," she shot back. "And you got everything. The talent, the fame, the love. While Jesse got an unmarked grave, and a mother who never stopped crying for him." That last part hit Elvis like a physical blow, because it was true. Gladys had never fully recovered. She'd visit Jesse's grave, talk to him. Elvis had watched his mother love a ghost his entire childhood. The arena was so quiet, you could hear people breathing. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something raw, something nobody knew how to process. Elvis could have had security remove her, could have made a joke, could have continued the show. Instead, he did something that nobody in that room expected. He invited her on stage. "Come up here," Elvis said. "Please, I want to hear what you have to say." Security looked confused. His manager Colonel Parker was probably having a heart attack in the wings. But the woman, after a moment of surprise, started making her way to the stage. Her name was Dorothy Raines. She'd been Gladys Presley's closest friend in Tupelo. She'd been there the night the twins were born. Had held Gladys while she sobbed over Jesse's tiny still body. When Dorothy reached the stage, Elvis guided her to a chair someone had quickly brought out. He sat down next to her. 18,000 people watching two strangers have a conversation that should have been private. "Tell me about that night," Elvis said. "Nobody ever talks about it." "Not really." Dorothy's anger seemed to deflate. In its place came something softer. Sadness. "It was January. Middle of winter. So cold. Your daddy drove your mama to the clinic. But the babies came fast. Jesse came first. He was blue. Wasn't breathing. The doctor tried everything. But some babies just don't make it." Elvis was crying now. Not hiding it. Just letting the tears fall. "Then you came," Dorothy continued. 35 minutes later, screaming like you owned the world. "And your mama, she looked at you. And she loved you. God, she loved you. But she kept looking at Jesse, kept saying, 'Both my boys. I want both my boys.'" "I know," Elvis whispered. "She told me. Every birthday. She'd say, 'Happy birthday to my two boys,' even though only one of us was there." Dorothy looked at Elvis with an expression that was hard to read. "For 35 years I blamed you. Thought you stole his life. Thought the wrong baby lived." The words hung in the air. Brutal, honest, unforgivable. "But watching you now," Dorothy said slowly, "I realize something. You didn't steal his life. You've been trying to live two lives this whole time, and that's why you're dying inside." Elvis looked at her sharply. "What do you mean? You think you have to be enough for both of you? Every song for two people. Every performance for two souls. You're killing yourself trying to honor a brother you never met. And that's not what Jesse would have wanted." That's not what your mama should have asked of you. Elvis broke down completely. In front of 18,000 people, the king of rock and roll sobbed like a child, for Jesse, for Gladys, for the impossible weight he'd carried his entire life. Dorothy stood up, and did something unexpected. She put her arms around Elvis and held him. The way she would have held Jesse, if he'd lived. The way someone should have held Elvis decades ago, and told him it wasn't his fault. "I forgive you," Dorothy whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "And more importantly, you need to forgive yourself. You didn't kill Jesse. You survived. And that's not a sin." Elvis held on to her like she was the only solid thing in the world. The audience was crying, grown men, teenagers, parents holding their children tighter. When they finally separated, Elvis wiped his face, and did something that nobody expected. He sang In the Ghetto, the song about a child born into poverty and death. But this time, he changed the lyrics slightly. Made it about two children. One who lived, one who didn't. One who carried both their stories. His voice was ragged with emotion. Imperfect, but it was the most honest performance of his career. After the song ended, Dorothy said something that made Elvis freeze. "Your mama made me promise something before she died. She made me promise that if I ever saw you I'd tell you this. Jesse's watching, and he's proud." Elvis looked at her. "She really said that? She said you were living the life Jesse never got to have, and that somewhere, somehow, Jesse was living through you, not because you stole it, because you shared it." The show never really recovered its energy after that. Elvis finished the set, but it felt like everyone had witnessed something too intimate for a concert hall, something sacred. Dorothy left the stage to a standing ovation. Elvis never saw her again. She died 8 months later. But something changed in Elvis after that night. Friends said he seemed lighter, less haunted. He stopped talking about living for two people, started talking about living for himself. He also started visiting Jesse's grave, left flowers, talked to his brother the way their mother had, but differently, not with guilt, with gratitude. "Thank you for letting me have this life," he'd say. "I'll try to make it count." The bootleg recording of that night became legendary among collectors. Not for the music, for the moment when Elvis Presley stopped being a performer and became a man confronting his deepest wound in front of 18,000 witnesses. Some fans were angry, said Dorothy had no right to attack Elvis like that. Others said she'd given him a gift. The gift of confrontation, of truth, of release. Both were right. Elvis drew a line that night. Between the life he thought he owed Jesse and the life he was actually living. Between survivor's guilt and survivor's purpose. 18 months later, Elvis would struggle with prescription drugs, would battle his own demons, would face his own mortality. But people close to him said that night in Vegas had changed something fundamental. "He stopped apologizing for being alive," said one of his musicians. "And that's when he started really living." Dorothy Raines's grave is 3 plots away from Jesse Garon Presley's In Tupelo. Some people say that's a coincidence. Others say Gladys arranged it years ago, a way for Dorothy to watch over the son she never got to hold. Elvis's grave is 400 miles away at Graceland, but on his headstone there's a small inscription most people miss. For Jesse and me, the story of that night raises questions nobody can fully answer. Was Dorothy right to confront Elvis? Was her anger justified? Did Elvis really need that confrontation, or did it just reopen old wounds? Or maybe the real question is simpler. How many people are living someone else's life because they survived when someone else didn't? Elvis stopped his show that night. He let a stranger weaponize his deepest pain in front of thousands, and somehow, it set him free. 50 years later, we're still arguing about whether that was courage or cruelty, whether Dorothy saved Elvis or scarred him, whether some wounds need to be ripped open to finally heal. Maybe the answer is all of the above. Maybe some moments are too complex for simple judgments. Maybe that's exactly what makes them worth talking about.
What would you do if someone blamed you for surviving?